Hey everybody, welcome back to the Wicked Sports Show for March 3rd, 2025. I'm your host, Brian. Jam-packed show, as always, for you. 4 topics to go over, all relating to the NFL. Because, things are starting to happen. We're getting closer to the draft. We just had the NFL Combine. Teams are making moves. They're trying to figure out where they're going to stand in the future, where they stand now, and what kind of players they either can get from the draft or they'll have to get through other means. So, start off with the Los Angeles Rams, who worked out a reconstruction deal with Matthew Stafford. So, here's the thing. Matthew Stafford wanted a new contract. The rumor was that he wanted $50 million a year, and the Rams were a little hesitant to do that. So, they let him search, I guess would be the best way to put it, see if there was anything out there for him on the free agent market. And that was a big story because there were people saying that, oh, the Giants are looking for a quarterback. They currently have no quarterbacks in their quarterback room at all. So it would make sense that the Giants would be looking for anybody, but especially someone like Matthew Stafford. And so the rumor was that they were going to trade for Matthew Stafford. And then Aaron Rodgers would go to the Rams. The Rams would either trade for Devante Adams or they would just get him if the Jets released him. More on that later in the show. So that was prevailing wisdom for a little bit. Then it came out that Tom Brady and Matthew Stafford ran into one another, totally random, not planned, on a ski trip. And they had some discussions. Obviously, Brady works for Fox, but also a minority owner in the Las Vegas Raiders. Not 100% sure how he can have both jobs without any conflicting interests. But, if the NFL's okay with it, I suppose I'm okay with it. But they talked, and then people were saying, oh, well, maybe Stafford will go to the Raiders. And maybe that will kind of make the Raiders more competitive going into next season. They had Gardner Minshew as their starter for a lot of the season this year. Not too great there. They really don't have much in the way of a plan at quarterback in Las Vegas. So people are saying, okay, that makes sense. He goes to the Raiders, and then we can still have Aaron Rodgers and Devante Adams go to the Rams. But after he was out there, presumably talking to people, seeing what kind of a trade people would be up for in terms of acquiring him, wasn't what he wanted. He decided that he's going to stay in Los Angeles. They restructured his deal, and I think this is a good move. I mean, I think the Rams are a good team. They made the playoffs this year. They're really the only team that gave the Eagles any kind of a challenge in the playoffs. They potentially could have won that game in the snow in Philadelphia. They had the ball at the end of the game going down to score, and they just weren't able to do it. But it would have surprised me, and I even said it at the time, that moving on from him, given everything he's given to the organization, the Super Bowl title in 2021, and the impressive seasons when he's been healthy, it would be very surprising to me for the Rams to just let him go. Obviously, the Rams were somewhat open to that because, his salary demands were too big initially. So they were like, okay, see what's out there. And evidently, what's out there, not terribly enticing for Matthew Stafford. So Stafford will be returning for at least 1 year, probably 2. I do think, as long as Matthew Stafford is playing and playing at the level that he has the last few years, and I have no reason to think he would not play at that level, given everything we've seen from him. It's not like he's someone who necessarily relies on insane athletic ability. Then I think he can continue to keep the Rams in this position of being a contender. Is that a Super Bowl contender? I think yes. Your mileage may vary there on what you think of Matthew Stafford, but I think he's good enough and almost underrated to a point to where he is good enough to give the Los Angeles Rams a chance to beat any team any Sunday. They almost beat the Eagles. The Eagles were obviously the dominant team at the end of the season. They won the Super Bowl in blowout fashion. So ultimately, I think this was a great move for Los Angeles. I think they'll be happy to have Stafford for the next couple of years, and it will give them an opportunity to start the process of seeing who will be the next quarterback for the Rams, because having like a year or two timeline kind of gives you a little bit of a, okay, we really need to get it done. We really need to figure out who's going to be next here. So ultimately, I'm happy for the Rams and the Rams fans. If you're a Rams fan and you see this video, I'd love to hear what you think of Matthew Stafford staying in Los Angeles. Are you happy? Were you kind of wanting to move on for whatever reason? I don't know why you would have been, but if there was anything that made you want to move on from Matthew Stafford, I would love to hear about it in the comments down below. Moving on from the Rams to another NFC West team, the San Francisco 49ers have traded wide receiver Deebo Samuel to the Commanders for a 5th-round pick, as well as the Commanders picking up a good amount of his salary. So obviously, you remember Deebo Samuel a few years ago really made a name for himself. He had a 1,400-yard receiving year. He proved to be incredibly valuable as both like a running back and wide receiver. He had a big, I don't know if kerfuffle's the right word, but he had a standoff with the 49ers in order to get a new contract. He was holding out. He ultimately did get that new contract. And ever since then, he has not been the player he was before due to injuries and, I'm sure a flurry of other things. He changed his number from 19 to 1. Does that matter? Probably not. But, I think, it's kind of like Deebo Samuel when he's wearing 19. Pretty great. Deebo Samuel when he's wearing number 1. Fairly forgettable. So I think this was, a move that the 49ers made just to get a player who perhaps is declining, or at least is declining within their system, off to another team and get a lot of his contract off the books, because they probably, with the emergence of Brandon Ayuk, were like, listen, Deebo Samuel is not the player that he once was. We're not necessarily in a position to pay all these players. You got Brock Purdy's up for a new contract. Brandon Ayuk just signed one. Christian McCaffrey signed a big one. Joey Bosa or Nick Bosa, whichever Bosa is on the 49ers. And, they're just like a team with a lot of talent, and they need to save some money somewhere. And getting rid of Deebo Samuel is the place that they deemed the most reasonable to save money. And I think that's probably right, given his performance the last couple of years. It was obviously a surprise due to like his name, especially for, people who probably, know him only by name and reputation and the highlights that they've seen, and assumed he was producing at a similar level that he was when he was getting those highlights that they've seen, which is, as we know, not the case. He's really declined over the last couple of years, but seeing him get traded for a 5th was still somewhat surprising, and shows how the wide receiver market really peaked with the Tyreek Hill trade, right? That was, multiple 1st-round picks, 2nd-round picks. And ever since then, there's been a real regression in what teams are willing to give up. Amari Cooper is like a 5th-round pick. Devante Adams is a 5th-round pick, 4th-round pick, whatever. Mid rounds, let's call him that. And now Deebo Samuel again, mid-round pick for the Commanders. I think for the Commanders, from their side of things, this is an extremely interesting trade, right? They had a fairly dynamic offense last year. He won't have to be the number 1 receiver with Terry McLaurin, my apologies, being the number 1 receiver in Washington. Brian Robinson Jr., like him, inspirational story. He got shot and came back and played, pretty well, but he isn't the best running back in the league. Maybe they can find another running back in the draft, and then there'll be an offense that could potentially really make some noise. I mean, they're in the NFC Championship game this year. Cliff Kingsbury is a excellent offensive coordinator, and we'll probably find some unique ways to use Deebo Samuel in his offense for this. And Jaden Daniels, of course, probably the best rookie last season, certainly making it to the NFC Championship game gives him a little bit more clout there. And so, very interested to see if this will pay off. Will Deebo Samuel return to form, or is it kind of over for him? Let me know your thoughts about that in the comments. All right, moving on from one wide receiver getting traded to a potential other wide receiver getting traded, her Ian Rappaport. The Jets are taking calls on Devante Adams. He will have a cap number of $38.2 million, which is why they want to move on from him because, he was okay last year, but, they're in a state of transition with a new coach and trying to figure out what they're going to do, and they don't necessarily want to be handicapped by a player who's aging and being paid so much. Obviously, they already told Aaron Rodgers they're moving on from him. So if they can't find a trade partner, they're going to release Devante Adams as well. And the rumor, of course, is that there's a feeling that he would just want to join whatever team Aaron Rodgers plays for next year, be that the Giants, which, plays in the same stadium. They wouldn't have to uproot their life. So I think that's an underrated part of things. Or, maybe the Raiders, they were in on Matthew Stafford. Now they're not. Of course, as we covered in an earlier segment, Matthew Stafford potentially was going to move on to either the Giants or the Raiders. He didn't. He's staying in Los Angeles. So now that opens up the Raiders or the Giants. And unfortunately for the Raiders, granted, new head coach and everything, Devante Adams seemed quite unhappy to be a part of that organization, despite it being his childhood favorite team. He, was caught on hot mic being like, I'm going to get killed out here. The way the quarterbacks are throwing probably wouldn't be the same with Aaron Rodgers. And I do believe that if Aaron Rodgers was like, we got to go to Las Vegas, we got to hook up with Tom Brady, who's the minority owner of the Raiders, that we can really make some noise, Devante Adams would probably be more open to it than you'd think on paper. But I do think that the Giants kind of make sense, right? They don't have a quarterback at all. You have Malik Nabers, who is the best rookie wide receiver last season, playing with a terrible quarterback room. So terrible that none of the quarterbacks are currently on the roster. So terrible that they don't even have any quarterbacks on the roster. You put Aaron Rodgers there and Devante Adams, all of a sudden, this Giants team that was very down, and of course, Brian Daboll, who probably got the best out of Josh Allen is in his time with Buffalo. He knows how to run an offense. This could be a dark horse contending team. The more I think about it, the more I do like the potential of him either getting traded or being released and signing with the Giants. Giants have some capital, and I don't think it will take much to move on. It will just be having to take that salary. So the bigger thing will be, can the Jets convince anyone to sign him, or rather to trade for him, or are they just going to have to release him? And I think, that's probably more likely that they'll have to release him. But if the Giants want to ensure that they're the ones to get him, and maybe Aaron Rodgers has a say in that if he does sign with the Giants, then I do believe that Devante Adams and Aaron Rodgers will end up still in New York, but this time wearing blue. What do you think of that? What do you think of that prediction? Do you believe that it's possible that Aaron Rodgers and Devante Adams could leave the Jets and go to the Giants, not have to uproot their life, just stay in one place? And do you think if they did that, the Giants would be set up well to succeed? Or do you believe that Aaron Rodgers has become a person who it's impossible to succeed with? We all know how he's really become outspoken on certain topics the last few years and really makes it feel like it's his way or the highway, and that kind of led to the deconstruction of the Jets. Would Brian Daboll even be open to it? Is it even his choice, or would, ownership of the Giants be like, this is your last chance, or you're going to get fired anyways? And would that open Daboll up to being more inclined to go with Rodgers and Adams? Very interesting situation, if there are other teams that could trade for Adams that I'm not thinking of, please let me know in the comments. All right, let's end this one with the Miami Minute. Welcome to Miami Minute. I'm your host, Brian. This is where we cover my favorite team, the Miami Dolphins. And for the second year in a row, Miami Dolphins are the top ranked team for the NFL Players Association report card. So the NFL Players Association report card is an annual survey that players receive from the NFL Players Association to rank various things in their organization. And last year, the Dolphins were the number one ranked team. And this year, they're the number one ranked team again. So scale goes all the way up to A plus, and it has on it treatment of families. Dolphins got an A. Their food dining area, Dolphins got an A plus. Their nutritionist slash dietitian, A plus. Their locker room, A plus. Their training room, A. Got to get that A plus. What are they doing there? Their training staff, A. Their weight room, A plus. And their strength coach, an A plus. That one was an A plus too. Sorry. When I pasted it to, it made the font very small. So it was a little difficult to read. But, A's all across the board, number one ranked team. And I think on the one hand, I look at that and I'm like, great. This makes the Miami Dolphins a premier destination. They already have, life in Miami. Pretty good. Great party scene, great weather, basically paradise. Now, the working conditions are the best in the league. So this should be a team that can attract good free agents, and players rather, want to go play for this team. So that heartens me. That makes me feel like the Dolphins can compete by offering good working environments. Because, we all want to have a good working environment. Professional athletes are no different. The Bengals are ranked like last. They don't even offer food or daycare for kids on game day. Dolphins have all of that. On the other hand, just as a fan, the Dolphins were number one last year. They're number one again this year. It makes me feel good. It's like, okay, my team treats their players quite well. What's frustrating is that there's been a lack of success. And other teams, like the Bengals, they've made the playoffs. Chiefs have terrible ratings. They're in the Super Bowl every year. So it's like, okay, how much effort is being put into these facilities and making the workplace a better place that could be used on personnel or, making the team better? And I don't know if it's like a either or situation, but it is frustrating. I'm going to put like facetiously on the individual Miami Minute thumbnail, like back-to-back champs, because the only thing the Dolphins are winning lately is, good PR for having good work conditions, but being number one and top ranked in the NFL Players Association report card. So I do hope that it's more going to be the first thing where the Dolphins are putting all this effort in an attempt to lure free agents here and help them build the team. I mean, if I was an NFL player and I saw all of these and I was on a team like the Bengals, the Cardinals, teams that got ranked low, I'd see Miami and I'd be like, love to go there. Love to play in Miami's weather, for one. But two, love to play for an organization that seems to take seriously the effects of these various amenities that other teams seem to neglect. We all know the NFL's a business, but the employees, the players, are the ones who make the product that the business makes all the money from. So the least that these billionaire owners could do is create really immaculate workplaces for their players. And hopefully that will bring success in the long term. So, what do you think about the Dolphins being ranked the top team for the NFL Players Association report card for the second year in a row? Are you happy that they offer such a positive work environment? Are you frustrated that the work environment doesn't translate to wins? What are your thoughts on all of this? Let me know in the comments. Thank you, everybody, so much for checking out this episode of the Wicked Good Sports podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe. The videos coming out all the time on this main channel. And then we have our other channels, which are our main channel, where you get everything, which has like video game essays. The sports channel is this one, of course, where you get sports. We're closing in on 300 subscribers, which is great. Really appreciate all the people checking out the show and subscribing. So please subscribe if you're interested. We also have the Those Fake Nerds channel, which is nerd news on movies and video games. So please check that out. And our podcasting channel for all of our podcasts that don't have to do with sports. That's called Better Radio. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.